song for the Gear Podcast. Welcome, Leon. We're back.
Welcome, Troy. We are back better than ever. How you been, mate? Did you have a good weekend? You were doing the Dockers. The Dockers won.
They won, so I've been in a good mood. And yeah, I mean, it was my son's birthday party, so that was cool. And yeah, otherwise, man, just living a life. What about you, my brother?
I was in Melbourne for the weekend, mate. So making noise. You know, that was good fun. I was wrecked yesterday, though. You know, People who know me know I don't partake in anything. I don't drink. I don't like drugs. I was just really, really tired because I flew across the entire continent twice in about 24 hours. So the show was really good. It was over. I think there was about 200 in pre-sales. So it was probably around 200, 250, which is, we played the Prince Band Room last year in about August. And that was tough to get people out. It was just post-COVID. So we got like a decent turnout for that. But yeah, there was about double this time, which is pretty awesome. And
sweet.
Yeah, the Sisters Dolls guys are great. And they had the rotating drum kit and all that kind of stuff happening. So
rad. That
was pretty fun. Caught up with some mates. I thought we played pretty well. Played Sky's Limit for the first time.
Did you butcher it?
We did. No butchery. It was actually good.
Good on you, mate.
It's like, and we did Letting Go, which we've never done before, which was also very, very good.
Nice.
I was watching the video back as well, and I was like, when I went to do the solo, like my high E string was just detuned by a semitone. Wrong.
Oh.
I just started a fret too low. There's a bunch of things because I played my blue custom 24 and, you know, it's got 24 frets. There's a bunch of times I was just off.
Right.
Which you shouldn't be. I've played that guitar for a million years. It's unacceptable. So, yeah, there were a few nuggety bits, but overall it was a pretty good vibe and caught up with some friends in Melbourne on the Saturday. And then I was back Saturday night. Had a gig Sunday, did a bunch of stuff yesterday, and, mate, here we are. And so how about your mates, the West Coast Eagles? Feel pretty good about that or what? It's funny how the tide has turned, hasn't it?
Yep.
A week ago, they were still getting flogged. They still had the injuries. They just hadn't lost by 171 points.
Biggest loss since 2011 for any team.
And
pretty good.
And what was that team that lost?
That was the first 200 plus point loss since, or 200 point game since 2011. But biggest loss since forever. So, yeah, Melbourne was the team, I think Geelong v Melbourne.
Was it like Mark Neild era Melbourne as well? Like the absolute...
I don't remember.
Bottom of the barrel. Like you've had Fitzroy.
Yep.
Then you've had that Melbourne team. And now you've had this West Coast team.
Yeah, I mean, like North was for the last 2 years.
North have been pretty bad too.
Pretty rubbish.
North have been pretty Fitzroy. But yeah, they weren't getting pumped by 170 points.
Yeah, I was really rooting for Fitzroy back in like 95 because they were so shit.
Do you remember that last game?
Yeah, they played the Dockers, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, flogged them as well.
Yep. And it was so like, I think maybe you sent me that recently. You're like, check this out. And it's just weird after the game, hey? Like, well, this is it.
I absolutely watched it live that year.
Yeah, me too. I remember it being like, oh my God, they're gone.
Do you know what? Like, I think in my brain, I reckon I'm a year off in terms of how tuned in I was to football.
Right.
I always thought it was 95 that I was like super into it, but I think it might have actually been 96.
Yeah, I think 1996 is the first year I properly remember in my life because I remember writing the dates at school on every piece of work I ever did. Other stuff happening. But yeah, Port Adelaide came in 96, right?
No, later than that, 98 maybe, I think.
Really?
Yeah, because Freo came in like 95.
Yeah, Freo were 95. I know that.
I don't think Port was 96. I think it was like 98. I think.
Okay.
You can check that. But,
and
they almost made...
This is a fact-accurate podcast. We'll get to it.
They almost made the 8 in their first season. I think they finished 9th, which would have been like...
That's right.
Had they made the 8, it would have been a pretty big deal. And I liked Port back then as well. And then I hated them, and I kind of like them this year. I'm really... Man, Port Collingwood Grand Final would be sick.
Well, my old man, who's a diehard Magpies supporter, if you're a team that's a Magpies or you're black and white, he'll support you. He's rooting for that because then that way, you know, he can't lose. Because it's Port Adelaide Magpies versus Collingwood Magpies.
Yeah.
Yeah, when did they
Bill
come
Todd
into the competition? I really want to know. They were founded in 1870. I love how they have we are the most successful AFL club ever.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like, count all these sandful premierships that we've won.
Yep.
So that's pretty crazy.
Proud history, Port.
97. Yeah, see, okay. I'm off by a year as well. They came into the AFL. So there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, the Gear Pass podcast, the Gear Pass.
Well, mate,
there's that new PRS guitar out. You know, there's two, isn't there? There's the Miles Kennedy and the NF 53.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So on that note, we'll talk about that, but you wanted to sort of talk about like refined classics, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I think you could say that. I think you
PRS,
you did just say that.
Sir, your what other companies? Your Duesenbergs, these kind of companies that I guess have taken classic guitar designs and just made them a little bit better.
Yep.
A little bit more good and kind of built their reputation around it.
What's your feeling off the bat? Like yay or nay?
For the new PRS?
Well, okay, start with the PRS, and then we'll talk about just the Actually, you know what? Let's start with this. What's your feeling on the general idea of taking a classic instrument and I guess modernizing it and making it better? Are you for it or are you not for it?
100% for it.
Okay. I think I am. I think I'm pretty for it. But I think it's worth a little discussion. But let's start with the new PRS because I saw that and laughed and went, "Fuck off, Paul!" Like I was not into that guitar.
It's a Telecaster,
and it's like I'm not into the Silver Sky. I think
mate, we all know about your love and appreciation for anything John Mayer, particularly that guitar.
Yeah, the we'll talk about my other theory in a minute. But I thought that guitar was just super whatever. I didn't like the way it felt to play it. To know that now there's a Telecaster of that, I was a bit like, well, fucking what's the point? Just buy a Telecaster. I guess the more I thought about it and I watched a couple videos, I sort of came around a bit because there are things about the tellies that I have that I don't like. And to be fair, it kind of feels like they fixed them a little bit. I think partly I just in my head, I'm like, if you want a telly, buy a telly. If you want a Strat, buy a Strat. Just if you want a Les Paul, get a Les Paul. And so when you have a design that's just so clearly just ripped off something that is old, my gut instinct is just to say fuck off. So it's probably not that justified, but again, that's why I thought it'd be an interesting topic of discussion for today.
It's just the reactionary conservative within, mate. It's just finding its way out, It's like, well, this already exists. What's the point? Why would I do that?
Yeah.
I mean, what don't you like about a Telecaster?
I think I watched a couple of the videos. I think it was maybe Paul sitting and playing it and stuff, but the noise issue is a big one.
Yes.
I didn't really know that much about the Narrowfield pickups, and they sound pretty interesting. I think is that in the Paul's guitar? Is that his signature model?
Yeah, I feel like maybe there's one in the neck or something like that.
Yeah, I just thought it was this mini humbucker, to look at it, and I was like, I don't really I'm not that frothing on mini humbuckers, but if it's more of a kind of single coil, but you've taken the noise out, you can get that sound, but take the noise out. I'm like, well, I'm kind of interested in that. So, little things that's kind of the biggest one for me, I suppose. I really this kind of flies in the face a little bit of what I was about to say, but it's I think I messaged you about this maybe a few weeks ago where the Charvel Telecaster actually kind of I hated the way it looked at first, but I come around on that as well, where I do really like the way tellies feel and I like the body shape. But it's got I think it's the same on the PRS one, but there's body contours on it as well, which is just comfortable to play.
And Fender do make a telly, a modern telly with a tummy cut, right?
I think they do, yeah. So I guess I kind of I've sort of come around to the concept of maybe tellies being a little bit more refined, but I don't know. Just something about the PRS ones always just instinctively make me go, fuck you. It's kind of silly.
Yeah. So I guess my take on it is like their single cut. If you like the way a custom 24 plays, and then you go and play a Gibson, it's different. Different is good, but maybe you want it a little bit more like your custom 24 or your, 22 or whatever it is, whatever sort of model you're playing. So there's definitely that thing where it's like, I like this, but I want access. I want the same feel and I want the same level of, refinements, whether it's the way the frets are dressed, or whether it's less noise from the pickups, or whether it's straight string pull on the headstock, or, all these like tiny little incremental things that do make a difference, and especially cumulatively make a difference. So you get that kind of like, I'm used to this type of guitar, and, I played a real Telecaster and it's cool, but there were things that I didn't like about it. If I can get that sound and maybe a little bit of that aesthetic while still being in that universe of like a PRS or something like that, then I guess that's why they're making it.
Yeah, I think so partly why I came around to the new PRS Tele thing is I'm sort of, I guess, like searching for the perfect gig guitar. I've sort of done that a little bit. I played my 335 at a gig the other night. How was that? The last 2 weeks I played it. I did it for a 4-piece rock gig or covers gig, and then for a duo gig. For the covers rock thing, it was really awesome. I used it all night. It sounded great. For the duo gig with all the loops and the way I use it, it just wasn't quite the right feel. But a couple of reasons. Firstly, because it was tuned down to D standard and it did not like that tuning. So there's one. Secondly, the pickups on it are really hot, and everything was dialed into my telly, which was quite low output, so everything was a little too grunty sounding. I was just sort of like, we were a bit pushed when we started. It was pretty much like, everything gets plugged in, just start the gig. So I didn't really have time to dial the tone in when I was there. So it didn't really work for that. But my Jason Isbell telly, my Fender one, which I've had for maybe 2 years now, that's just become like the perfect gig guitar for me. It feels really comfortable to play. It's been refretted, and it's had a lot of work done to it. But there's still things about it where it's like, the rock, like the grunt. I do love a grunt, and it has a different sort of like bridge sound to it. I remember when we spoke to Charles the other day, I mentioned like, I think I'm a super strat guy, like in my heart, but specifically HSS, because I love that single coil thing in the neck, and I love the humbucker in the bridge. Like that is the kind of the perfect combination for me. So I'm trying to find like that pickup combination, but with a body style and everything else that kind of suits me. Like the 335, the size of the body is awesome because I'm a big person, and I feel like when I hold it, it looks proportional. I went to the music shop today, and there was like the most sick, beautiful looking purple EVH Wolfgang guitar, or whatever that is. And I was like, oh man, that looks awesome. It'll be perfect for the Dockers games, but they're just like so small. I just don't really feel that comfortable playing them. If it was like
kind of telly-ish, kind of.
Yeah, but they feel way smaller than that. Like
the neck's very narrow, I think.
Yeah,
that's the
body
thing
too.
that I've noticed.
Yeah, I like size on it. So again, like I'm on this search for what is the most perfect guitar for me, which it's so silly. I got plenty of amazing guitars. Like I'm very spoiled for that. But so yeah, this new PRS thing, like the more I thought about it, it's like, oh look, it's a bit more modernized. It's a little bit more silent. It's got the comfortable body contours on it. Maybe I could sort of live with that. It's pretty pricey though. Hey.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, all their stuff, everything is more expensive, but in particular, their core models really are. You got to spend some big dosh.
Well, because like when the Silver Sky came out, I reckon that was like 3.5-ish, but like
in Australia,
Australia. But did you say it was more like 3.5 US when it came out? Or
no. I think it's around the 3 mark.
Okay.
Look, mate, we'll look this up while we're talking about it. The thing that I do, contrary to what I was saying before about, you want that telly look and feel and things like that, you could get like a DGT, and I get that they're a more expensive guitar, but if you're going like super high end PRS, then that thing, again, it's sort of, it doesn't look like it's going to be, but it's sort of like a refined 60s Strat and 50s Les Paul in one. You get some kind of pseudo teletones out of it. It doesn't sound exactly like any of them, but it's got its own thing going on. It's very, especially the wound strings have that kind of vintage like Les Paul grunt out of them, which is nice.
When I played that other DGT, I really liked that guitar. Like that was on my sort of, maybe not bucket list, but it was on my list of guitars to what could be the perfect gig guitar. But I think like other things that I really appreciate in the perfect gig guitar for me is something that I can trash. And that's really important.
Yeah, and you don't want to do that to like a fancy top Les Paul or PRS or something. Like a Telly is just,
like,
I
bought my Sir, which is, should I grab it? Actually, I've moved the studio around, so it's actually a lot easier to grab. I'll chuck it up on the screen. I think I showed Charles, but here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, Troy Naberband's Sir. I believe it's Koa, stainless frets. Look at that thing. If you're listening to the podcast and not watching, it's a beautiful piece of flamed Koa, kind of a sunbursty finish. You got, roasted maple on the neck, HSS. I remember when you bought that and just being like, oh my God, this is it. You're done. You found the one. But... Well,
yeah, I mean, like, I think at the time I bought that guitar, because I messaged you when we were in America, and like, I think I was in New York and you were Midwest, maybe still, or flown, I can't remember where you're at, but like, we'd never seen a Sir because they just didn't at that time exist in Perth. No one knew anything about them and no one would stock them. So that was exciting. And because we love Red Beach and he obviously played a Koa Sir, it was a pretty big deal. But it's awesome. But it's what a great shot. For those of you that are listening, Leon's cat just walked across the screen, so across the camera. So that was very good. So it's such a nice guitar, but it's so pretty, and I don't want to trash it. I got to take care of it. And I'm sort of in the process of redoing my pedal board at the moment, and as I was looking at my pedals in the light of day and not when I just pull it out of the pedal case and do a gig, which is pretty much all I do. Like, they're fucked, man. They're so messy and dirty, and they've had drinks spilled on them and everything. And this is stuff that, like, I've had these pedals for like a year and a half, some of them for a year and a half, 2 years, maybe 2 years, and they looked like they're about 15 years old, because that's just what happens when you do a gig, like
when you have your stuff on the floor at pubs a couple of times a week.
And when it comes to guitars, like I like guitars that look played. So I got a couple of road worns that they're not like hyper gaudy road worns. They do look pretty okay. Like they just look subtly, but then I've put so many dings and scratches in them, and to me that's like shows the love and shows the life in it. Whereas, something like a PRS, it's the thing, or like the really expensive fancy guitars, it's something that's kind of is a bit of a turn off. But it's such a signature of this, like taking an older instrument and refining it. It's like, oh, now it's like more perfected. Now it's shinier, it's cleaner, and it's all the things that made it shitty that we've removed them. And
there's a fine balance, isn't there?
Yeah, I think like, my blonde Telly, which is awesome. That's the one that looks the most fucked up. Like it was pretty it was like, medium road worn when I got it, and I've really beaten it up. And it's got a nitro finish on it too, so it's worn. It looks wicked, and it looks very, very played. But like partly the things I like about it, like there's the neck to play certain things on it is like to play a lot of chords and play sort of around the maybe first to the 7th, 8th, 9th fret is really comfy.
In the Keith Richards zone.
Yeah. And then when you go up a little higher, it's like it doesn't have low action. It's got like a what do you call it when the radius is like 7.25? It's the opposite of flat, more curved radius, I guess.
Yeah, it's curvy.
Yeah, curvy.
Frets out.
It doesn't have that sort of like elite shred, you do anything, like play anything on this guitar. But that's kind of what's nice about it, because it makes you just kind of like smash it harder. And when I play it, I just like, I bash it and I make different sounds with it. And that's awesome. And that's what gravitates me towards a Telecaster. It's just sort of, I wonder if when I play one of these new PRSs, if I'll just kind of be like, oh, it's just nice and you have to treat it kind. And do you want
to know what it costs in Australian dollars?
Yes, I do.
5,500 Australian dollars.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So that's about 3,000 US at the moment.
So is that for both of them, like each of them, or is that?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like you're in custom shop Telly territory for that.
Yeah, I mean, what did you pay for your Isbell Telecaster?
Like 2.5 or something, 2.2 maybe.
Like, and look, I hate this question when people say it. It's irrelevant. Is it really $3,000 better?
Well, who cares?
But is it really $3,000 better? You know, are you gonna? I would pay $3,000 if it was better. If it was like my favorite guitar, but there were a few little tweaks to it. You get to that stage where it's like, well, every small incremental thing is just going to cost way more.
Yep.
Once you get to a certain threshold, like, you know, the first, you know, the first month is free, but then from then on, you're on a subscription. That's just how stuff is. So
yeah, but
yeah,
it's always
to counter
like,
that.
You go on. Sorry, go.
Yeah, I was going to say to counter that, like my PRS, my blue one, my Custom 24, which I've gigged heaps, and to an extent my McCarty, which I've also gigged heaps, and my black SC245. Man, that thing's like the top of the guitar and the side of the binding pretty ugly now, and the back's got heaps of buckle rash, and you know they've just been toured and played a lot.
Yeah,
and I think as you were saying, it's like if you've had a guitar for a little bit and you've managed to preserve the kind of like, you know, how it came from the shop, then I find less impetus to want to potentially ruin it more. But once you start getting some character into it, you know, it's an aesthetic thing. You can't say that the aesthetics don't matter.
Yeah.
Like it's rock and roll is an aesthetic exercise. Country music is an aesthetic exercise. Pop is an aesthetic exercise. If you're taking part in these things, then it's important, you know, and like, yeah, having those scars on it kind of humanize it or something, or you know, they make you a little bit more connected to the instrument.
Yep. I mean,
even if it doesn't really translate into the sound, again, it makes you play a certain way and do certain things because you're less inhibited.
Yeah. When I watched the video of Miles Kennedy talking about his guitar, I think it looks pretty scratched up and pretty beat up. Like he's toured that for like a year or something like that. I mean, from what I saw online, it was like the worst kept secret is that this guitar was coming out because it was like he's been gigging it, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
But it's kind of different. Like it's got his name on it. So he's gonna, if he wants another one, he'll just like call up Paul and be like, give me another guitar. It's sort of, you treat it probably in a different way. I still have an attachment with, not attachment, I have this feeling with Paul Reed Smith guitars that they just need to be treated nicely. I think your single cut's a little different because it's a plain black one. I think it just, like the real, like beautifully figured maple tops, those are the ones that are just like, oh, better be careful with that one. It just has that class about it.
The purple into green thing, which I personally don't love. Like I can appreciate the artistry and the finishing, but you know, I think that's why I like that guitar because, you know, I like John Sykes, who plays a black Les Paul Custom, you know, and has played for ages and it's a bit beaten up. And, you know, Randy Rhoads, who played a white Les Paul Custom that sort of had that, you know, the paint color had gone off. I like that aesthetic of, like I do like old Gibsons and old Fenders. They look cool, but if you can have a similar vibe, but you can have better playability and better tuning stability, I'm all in for that. That's sort of the main, I think it's the main thing you get with, say, a new guitar. Like, say, if you talk about the refined Fender thing, I feel like, you know, obviously Sir, Anderson, those kind of things. John Sir was a Fender master builder as well. But, you know, the thing that I like about the Sir is Fender don't make a production guitar with stainless steel frets.
Right.
You can get basically any Sir with stainless steel frets and kind of never have to worry about having it refretted. And, you know, if you want HSS or SSH or anything like that, you can have those options on there. What is interesting is I feel like maybe the last 5-10 years, you've had, you know, the Super Strat has been around for a while, but now you've got like high-end builders that are doing those like munted Fender shapes, like the offsets, you know, the kind of unsung shapes, like what's the company? Bilt, B-I-L-T. They do like a kind of jazz mastery thing with a weird headstock. And, you know, you're starting to see like indie bands and alternative bands play the things which I guess were just kind of reserved for these, you know, rock musicians, where it's like, you know, there's that element of like rock music where it's scum, but also it's luxury. So seeing a slightly different aesthetic, more the alternative kind of scene, the high-end stuff, or even like, you know, the Duesenberg thing as like kind of refined Gretsch with some fixes to it. But I think the Sir to me is still, that's like you take, it's more than the sum of the parts. Like anyone can build a parts caster, but I've never played a parts caster that feels as good as your Sir or some other Sirs that I've played.
Yeah. I mean, I think like I almost looked at my one is, it's just obviously a super strat. They do the way more traditional strat type guitars, of which those ones that I've played have been. Oh, actually, have I played those ones? Maybe I haven't. I've sort of played more of their standard shape ones. I didn't like the modern one when I played it, but yeah, the one that I have, it's kind of like, despite what it looks like, it's like not really a strat. It doesn't give me that same feeling. Like when I pick up one of my strats, I have one feeling. When I pick up my Sir, it just is like, there's the element of like treat it nice. The element of like, it kind of makes me feel like I need to play the guitar higher as well. Put more touch into it. And also because it's got the humbucker in it, it can give you a lot more of that like chuggery sort of sound. So
right.
But it's obviously still, it comes from a Strat, but it's just not really the same. It's weird, man. Like, I think ultimately I'm complaining about nothing.
That's just why we have this podcast, right? It's
just having
complaints
a whinge,
about nothing.
But I don't know. I think like what it comes down to for me is maybe a silly thought, but it's like I just want to try and say it without just sounding like a complete fucking douchebag, but like, can't we just move on and just find a different thing with guitars? Like, you know, maybe instead of just trying to reinvent the wheel, like, let's come up with a new shape. Let's come up with a new pickup system. Let's come up with let's try and move on. It's sort of like, I know the answer. I know that we can't do that because ultimately guitarists are so conservative and we just want the thing that we want and that we're used to playing and we can't deal with innovation. But it feels like, what are we, like 70 plus years into the instrument as we know as an electric guitar, and we're still trying to fucking remake like Telecasters. There must be literally millions upon millions. Oh yeah, well, tens of millions of that shape and that do that thing in the world. There's surely there's like actual innovation that can happen that just pushes the instrument forward and pushes the genres of music forward of which you would use that for.
Well, like, when are you going to buy a Strandberg then? You know? Like,
well, you know what?
When are you going to buy an Aristides?
Yeah.
Because these things exist, but I know you would never be seen dead with a Strandberg at a gig. You're just not going to do that.
You're completely fucking right, man. It's
like, and they make things that are kind of like more designed for a telly kind of thing. And, you know, I've played a few. It's a thing. Like, they have the Enduro-neck thing and, you know, it's different. They tried. Steinberger. Look, I'd play a Steinberger live. 100%. But again, it's like a Steinberger is like the 80s vision of what the future would be like.
Yep.
And I feel like a Strandberg is like a 2020 vision of what the future will be like. But ultimately, you know, you're going to try and get the same kind of guitar sounds out of them. You know, does it boil down to like, to me, it's almost like approaching it like the guitar needs to change is a different question. It's like, once you've had electronic music, like, everything has changed, and it took maybe 30 years from the birth of the electric guitar until synthesis. And then once you have synthesis, you can just make sounds, you know? And how many modern pop albums are just some melodic content with a bunch of cool sounds? That's sort of I guess that's like the spirit of it and the ethos of it. And you can make those cool sounds with guitars, but yeah, it's almost like you can psych yourself out by thinking too hard about it.
Yeah, maybe. Look, you're right.
You know,
like, honestly,
and you see, like, you know, who's like hip in the world of electric guitar at the moment that we care. Like, think of, like, I don't know, Matteo Mancuso. Like, everybody's frothing that dude. Insane. It, like, you know, plays with his fingers. Fusion player. He plays a Revstar, like a Yamaha.
Right.
You know, it's not about the guitar. It's just, you just watch him play and you're like, that's ridiculous guitar playing, dude. cool, you know? It's not Steve Vai doing ridiculous guitar playing with like a universe anymore, because that was, oh my God, bro, do you know Steve Vai has a 7-string guitar? It's like, yeah, now the extended range guitar has become like a meme.
Yep. I mean, it would probably, like, you know, what you said about like Strandbergs and this sort of stuff. I mean, this is the complete fucking counter of what I just said, because I don't really like the way those guitars look that much. But also, I think partly what I don't like is it always feels so focused in just a particular genre of music and a particular sound that I'm not that interested in. So
yeah, I would say that
problem.
It flows the other way, that the real specific, you know, if you want to call them demands or aesthetic choices that particular genres make are going to lead them to want to find a different, like, oh, you know, I'm like, Plenty's not going to be, Plenty could play a Telecaster and sound like Plenty, but, you know, part of the aesthetic is that, yeah, he plays a Strandberg, you know, and like all his music videos look like an IKEA commercial. You know, great player, but like it's the like the zeitgeist of the YouTube generation, you know what I mean? Where it's like MacBook Pro and a minimalist studio setup and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, wearing clothing that doesn't have any logos on it. It's just kind of like what I guess our generation does, where, or it's, you know, be as commercial as possible, wear like Nike and Adidas and play a Fender. Like they're the things that people lean into, and they're like, oh, I'm being ironic. Yeah. Cause then you can't criticize me because we live in this like post everything age. So yeah, the Strandberg thing to me is it looks too much like IKEA. It's got that like Nordic minimalism about it, which, you know, it's not my favorite thing, but IKEA is pretty sick. They make stuff that I like to use.
Yeah, you know what? The more I think about it, I don't even know what my fucking problem is, to be honest. I think honestly, I think I'm just complaining about nothing.
We've got the gas, Troy. That's what it is, because, you know, you mentioned the PRS CE24 a few weeks ago, and I just got a DGT, and it's the best guitar I own. But like, guess what I was looking at online the other day? I wonder how much CE24 is. That'd be cool to get.
Also, I was in the music shop this morning and I was looking at other guitars and thinking, oh, that'd be cool. It's like I just got my 335 back after not having it for months. So it's you think I'd be able to at least enjoy that for a bit before I go getting on gas again.
I mean, this is not a guitar or musician specific problem. Like, if you want to see how insane people are with this stuff, like, go to a Reddit subthread about coffee or water or anything, you know. I think it's just what people do.
Yeah.
I mean, you could argue that it's late stage capitalism, Troy, and, you know, this is just all these things are just avatars for the meaningless of our lives. Yeah, but also, like, you know, why is it that you can look basically back into human prehistory and we've always just had toys?
Yeah. Oh, I think like the more I'm like thinking about it and discussing it out loud, I feel like I'm going round in circles and contradicting myself and just realizing how stupid I sound the more I complain. You know what I mean?
I mean, I'm the same, because I'll make a YouTube video about, hey, everybody, delete all your presets on your Axe effects and just have one preset and play music. And the next thing I'll do, I'll edit that video and then dial in 6 different ambient presets that I'm never going to use. So there was, I forget what I was reading, but someone made whether it's I read it and someone said it, or whether I read it and got thinking about it. But I think if you actually want to understand people, don't look for the things that you know, if you want to understand the way someone thinks, don't look at the parts of their thinking that is consistent and logical. Look at their hypocrisy. Like, what is someone super hypocritical about? And then you kind of understand what drives them.
Right. That's interesting.
That's an interesting take, I think. And if you wanted to apply that lesson to, say, historical figures in rock guitar, you know, like Eddie Van Halen. I don't care about the gear, bro. I just play. Also had a signature piece of everything and was like an eternal tinkerer, you know, someone who had the touch, had the gift, like just could do anything. And they were constantly messing with their gear, yet they also always sounded the same. So, you know, what's that all about? Or, what would another good example be from the Thai table, Like, went from the ultimate convoluted thing to get, a guitar sound with some chorus on it that sounded cool, that everybody loved, to like Orange Crush. But, you're making records that like your fans just like, can you just do the first 5 albums again? So there's that element in there of, and I feel exactly the same because, the thing that makes me the happiest is making music, but, spend most of my time worrying about what I'm going to use. It was like the gig on the weekend. I was like, okay, cool. Going to take my blue PRS. Why am I going to take that guitar, Troy? Because if something happens to it and it falls out of the plane, I will be the least sad. I will be sad if that guitar got like snapped in half. But I would rather it be that guitar than any of my other PRS guitars. That's the decision. That's like the thought process. Insane. Like, dude, just take your favorite guitar. It's probably going to be fine.
Yeah.
It's safer than driving around with it.
I was looking at pedalboard stuff last week, and it was, you know the type of person that has the big pedal boards.
Oh yeah,
and the Strymons and like those type of guys. But I watched this one video, and
you know what? Go for it, bro. Like, go for it, 20-year-old Whopper kid. Have your Strifecta and your Eventides.
But
I'm judging you inside. That's a me problem. But I'm looking at it just going, yeah, I know what's coming next.
Well, yeah, the one video I watched, I think the guy was actually talking about how he was using an Axe-Fx for his gig, but now he's built like a smaller rig with an FM3, and it's like, okay, cool, no worries. That's fair enough. Like, it's more portable and stuff. But then it's like on like every aspect of the board, it was like, well, on the Axe-Fx rig, I'm going to have this pedal and this controller, and therefore I need the exact same pedal and controller, and then the same like expression pedals and stuff on this rig as well. I'm like, that's a lot of stuff. But then the MIDI controlling underneath it, and then all the routing and the cabling and stuff. And then it's just like, the reason you do it is that when you're on one stage, you use one rig, and when you're on the other stage, you use the other rig. But then meanwhile, you probably put like $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 per rig, and you're probably going to use them maybe once every week or once every month. And it's like, what the fuck are we doing this for? It's just so, like, I'm doing the same thing at the moment because I just bought another rock board. I bought the 4.2 one, the slightly bigger one, because I got the 4.1, and I'm thinking about transferring everything over from my 4.1. But then, like, I put that FM3 on the 4.2 board yesterday with an expression pedal. I'm like, well, that looks pretty cool, and I might actually have enough room to put like the RC500 on here and maybe a different Morningstar controller and then all this sort of stuff. And it's like, but then I could use that rig to do these gigs, and then I've got my other board for doing the other gigs. It's like, man, I'm doing the exact same thing, and all that's going to happen is I'm going to have a massive hole in my wallet again for no reason.
Yeah, and it's, being, all of these things were previously only accessible to pros. So if you were touring and you were playing 5 times a week, 6 times a week, 10 times a week, however much it was, you needed this stuff to just bolt on and go. But now it's available to everybody, Like, I think about the busiest I've ever been playing music. I think it was 2014. We did the States, and we did 21 shows in 4 weeks. We did a couple of like double ups where we did an afternoon show and an evening show. And it was, I didn't have any time to play guitar. Like, I didn't get to practice. I didn't get to warm up. We just get to the gigs. I had that PV 112 6505 plus, had an Eventide. My board was a tuner, a wah. I think I had an SD1 as a boost, or like the way, like there was some pedal doing boost things that never changed. I think I had a Green Rhino at one stage, or it was probably just an SD1. And then I had that Eventide time factor, and I had 2 different presets on it. And tap tempo. Tap tempo was really, really important. Once I had that, I was like, do everything. On a volume pedal. That's right. But the volume pedal would be first thing in the chain. And
you went from having like, all I went was a tuner, to having like 7 pedals on your pedal board. But
yeah, anyway. Right. So, but it just went straight back in the bag. It got taken out the gig. It went straight back in the bag into the van. Like that was it. That rig got used heaps. I had one setting on the amp that I used. So I think about all the gear I've been through in the interim, and I think my rig is actually better now, and it's an FM3 and an expression pedal, and it does all the same things. It could do so much more.
Yep.
You know, I could do insane stuff with it, but it's still the same sounds.
Yep.
It's like heavier and louder with delay, and then heavy plus delay.
Yep.
Tap tempo, wah. That's enough.
Yep.
Even I borrowed my mate Shane's Axe Effects in Melbourne over the weekend, and he's got an FC12. So I had the FC12, and it threw me a few times because I'm used to 3 buttons.
Yep.
With tap and hold. So yeah, I actually think, and I mean, that's one reason why my FM3 just stays in the case between gigs. I actually don't take it out and really play with it anymore. The big box is for play. The little box stays there. It stays under the stairs now, and it's just like gig. Yep, I know that's going to work. So that's my way of cutting the Gordian knot of gear.
But man, I do the exact same thing. Like my pedal board during the week, it doesn't come out. It comes out outside of a gig. It comes out maybe every 3 months, 4 months, because I'll program a different like a few different songs into it, which is really it's only just tempo. Like song title, tempo, and maybe a rhythm pattern on the one thing, and then occasionally I'll also, if I've really just been hating my sound for whatever reason, I'll try and dial something different in with the HX Stomp. But yeah, it's the same thing, man. Like you rock up to the gig, you do the gig, you go home. My guitar's the same. Like it used to be when I played my Cole Clark acoustic for all the gigs. It never ever came out of the case because like I'm staring at my Guild acoustic right now, and I've got several other like really nice acoustics. The Cole Clark is just a tool, like it's my work device. And now it's sort of is like that with my Charvel and my Isbell Telly, because they both serve different purposes. One is to do the Dockers, and one is to do all the other cover gigs. My Axe Effects, my AX8, sorry. I still take that for the Dockers gigs. It literally never comes out of its laptop case, which is what it has lived in for the last like 6 years. Never comes out unless I've got to like do that one gig. But all this stuff, I'm still in this constant trap of like, okay, looking at gear, but just the thought of like, yeah, it can do cool stuff. Like, what more cool stuff can I do? How much time do I want to waste? Like, that's why the Morningstar and the way that whole rig works is really cool. Like from the tech nerd side of it, I'm really happy with how that's all come together. There's still more stuff that could happen. Because like, man, I could hypothetically, like we've got the same Behringer digital mixer which has MIDI in. I could control that with a foot pedal if I wanted to.
Yep.
And I've thought about doing that with a WIDI jack because it might just be channel on and off or reverb on and off on a vocal. Like you can do anything you want. It's just
I think there's a thing now where people have always thought of these things. How cool would it be to do A, B, C, or D? And when the actual ceiling, like the price ceiling comes way down on that, it's like, well, yeah, a WIDI jack's not expensive. I'll just get one.
Yep.
And then I've got more stuff that I can do. Whereas, you know, that's a bit cheaper than paying a sound guy to run your desk for every single gig. So yeah, I think part of it, it's interesting. I feel like we're untangling this.
We've really gone off topic, but it's I think it's a cool topic, but go on.
Yeah. You know, it's sort of, you're within striking distance of all these ideas. So it's actually, I'm going to argue that it is creative, but sometimes the flexing that creativity you end up just flexing it purely on like signal chain and routing and, you know, sound design rather than music.
Yep.
And that always gets thrown around as a criticism. But, you know, we should be focusing on making more music. Why? No one values music anymore. I think what people really want to do is they want the satisfaction of doing something creative with their life. And the only thing they know how to do is how to play music. And this is going to be a conundrum for the entire planet when, you know, AI replaces heaps of jobs. What are you going to do with yourself?
Yep.
You don't have any creative outlet anymore. You may have said you hate your job, but, you know, it was keeping you busy, and you had to do creative things. You had to solve problems. Like there's something so fundamentally human about, here's a little game. There's like an issue in the game. That's sort of that's what I like about music anyway. It'd be really, really sad if there was no more people making music anymore. But, really the core, the kernel of truth in there is that like I like creativity is kind of good for being a person. You can do too much of it. You can get carried away with it. You can like lionize it too much. But, it's why I like Charles's setup a couple of weeks ago, It was a nice balance between I've got a job to do and I've got cool stuff, but then the cool stuff is organized in a way that I can do the job.
Yep.
And the job lets me play with the cool stuff sometimes. So that was as balanced as I've seen any gear hoarder.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, I find a lot more enjoyment in the like less in the playing of music. It's something I need to just accept. Like, because I can play music, I can do a gig and I can get paid for it, and it's more interesting to work out how to make things switch together and work together. Because, I mean, to do like the gigs that you and I do, like if it's a cover thing, you can do it in your sleep. Like it's been, I don't know, 1,000+ gigs over the years, and some, you play the same couple of songs every night. It's fine. That's a job. Whereas, the creative part of that for me is not in the playing. It's in the technical sort of stuff. So it's just sort of interesting for me to put all that together, and so that's why I guess I'm still happy to spend the money on it, even though it's not that financially responsible.
Yeah,
sometimes.
But you do run up to the moral and value judgment of if the only thing of worth in the music industry is the making of music, and you're like, how many people really do this? And then the making of music. Oh, cool, bro. I got some get good drums and Eurobase and a neural DSP preset, and I went 0101 in a different order. Like, awesome. If that's what gets you off, do it. But it's not there's no hierarchy of morality between that and plugging a pedal board in, or plugging an out-of-tune Squire into a Big Sky and just making dream pop because that's what you want to do. So, it's we make problems for ourselves really, really easy with some of this stuff. So I think the big refinement, we're bringing it around, mate. We're coming back in. We're bringing the tide back around. The refinement that has been made to the way we can make the electronic part of the guitar sound that's where all the innovation has really happened. Like, I feel like you got composite materials with Steinberger and Parker. Mm-hmm. There's literally been nothing new. Doesn't mean there hasn't been cool stuff, but if you're just looking for novelty and you're looking for new ways of doing stuff, like you got to cut down a tree to make a guitar, basically, and you have to use a bunch of petrochemicals to make the plastics to put on it. That's obviously now a concern that is in the mainstream consciousness of people. Like, well, how much more of the environment do we want to destroy? Playing devil's advocate, I would say well, your little guitar hobby probably isn't the problem. It's probably the, gigantic multinational corporations that are doing it. Easy cop out though. So yeah, I can understand that even, you make the coffee analogy is, for our parents' generation, coffee was you just go and get a bit of Nescafe and put it in a cup and you feel less tired at the end. Mm-hmm. Whereas, for me, it's a single origin from Ethiopia, this region, traceable, trackable, the small farmer gets X percentage, the distribute, it's there's this transparency there where, you're sipping the cup, enjoying it, and you're telling yourself you're enjoying it more because you're conscious of the industrial process behind it or something like that. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like that with guitar. I don't care. I just want to play it. That's a different thing. But I get that for other people, that's also playing a guitar that's not made of wood, or, that's not made in a Southeast Asian factory where the workers are making minimum wage. Maybe the people are actually getting paid better or something like that. You know, they're things that map onto the personality traits of somebody who's a musician, because you're probably a little bit, you know, you spend a lot of time worrying about how you're going to feel and your audience is going to feel. So why not the whole kind of signal chain? Man, we're so off, and it's so awesome.
Yes. Hopefully people have stuck around. I mean, yeah, it's yeah, I'm trying to think of how I can bring it back onto topic other than just to say, I just need to shut the fuck up.
Sorry, my point was going to be that you can have refinements. You can still Fender can still make a Telecaster, you know?
Yeah. But
the refinement doesn't necessarily have to be in the design. It can be in all the other things. Okay. And, you know, there's been, you know, like... in like the way industrial processes happen now has changed massively from the 50s as well. And I guess that's why you have a boutique guitar market, because industrial processes get more efficient, and new, you know, why would we use this nitrocellulose lacquer that goes off and we can have this, you know, poly finish or something like that? Or, you know, we can have CNC. And so people are like, well, I liked it when it was a handmade guitar. So these other, as the automated part of it becomes more and more taken care of, then you get these cottage industries spin out of it, where it's like, oh, we're going to make it on a small scale, but like they did in the 50s. Mm-hmm. That's a big part of the guitar market. Same thing with amps, you know, like talking to Santiago last week, where it's, you know, part of his job was design the amp, but another part was design the amp to meet spec. And, you know, emissions and things like that, which were just not a thing in the 60s and 70s, and now they are. So yeah, it's maybe a little bit uncomfortable realizing that, like, the hobby that we love so much is embedded so deeply into like these big global processes that happen. You're just like, it's a guitar, you know, that company makes it, and I identify with the values of the company. Mm-hmm. When the reality doesn't match that at all. So yeah, maybe there's like refinement there as well. Or maybe that's a really good argument to buy old guitars and do them up.
Yeah. I mean, I actually have no basis in, no, if this is true, but I kind of have this feeling that PRS as a company seems like okay. Again, I don't know if that's true or not, but the fact that you got so many guys that are there that have been there for like 20 something years, it seems like at the very least it's probably an okay place to work. And Paul is obviously very passionate, and there's like...
Well, they took out a really big loan during the pandemic so they could pay their workers. Like, they didn't lay off their staff unpaid. They paid them throughout the lockdowns and stuff like that. Yep. And whether a lot of other companies did that and just didn't advertise it, or whether the PRS just kind of did it and, you know, they had access to it. But I remember that happening and being like, okay, there's still some human beings working here.
Yep.
You're not just, you know, a bunch of ants in a factory churning out these things so that you can meet some global hedge fund's bottom line.
Well, even like, I remember watching a thing of Paul talking about the SE guitars, and he's like, yeah, you know, we had these made in, is it World Music in Korea that did them?
Yeah.
Or does them?
I think Cortec make them now.
Right. Well, anyway, he was like, we put these guitars out, and, you know, other companies were doing it, and they were hiding the fact that it was all made international, but we were like, no, like, they're good instruments and you guys deserve to be recognized, so we're going to put it on the back of the headstock to say this is where it's made and you should be proud of it, and we're proud of it. And it's like, that's kind of a, you know, that has like actual that
has ramifications for like the culture around consumption with musical instruments, you know? Because, man, how many Facebook groups have you been in over the years which are like a bunch of dudes talking about how awesome, you know, super strats that were made in America are, and American cars, and, you know, by the way, it's Friday, so here's some girl with her tits out, you know? Like, that's... yeah, awesome, bro. Like, you know, this is just it's fun for some people if that's what you like, but also to me, that is that like stagnant, I don't actually really like music, I don't actually really like guitar, I'm just a bit lonely. I want to hang out with my mates kind of thing, which is okay. Nothing wrong with that. But, then going on these rants about, oh, the made in China or made in Korea and, whatever. It's, what is that? Economic nationalism that I'm talking about? It's not necessarily a bad thing, but you really, really see it really hard with guitars.
Yeah. I mean, I've said to you, and I've said to a lot of people recently, my Mexican-made guitars are the ones that I play the most. My Charvel and my Isbeltelli, both made in Mexico. My other, like Blontelli, made in Mexico. They're amazing instruments. They're player guitars. They feel great. They sound great. It's like, why would you spend so much more money to get a made in USA guitar that, man, like the comparison between some of the American tellies that I played and the like the Mexican ones have been very unfavorable, Because, I mean, what's the difference? Labor.
Like, what's the biggest cost for Fender or Gibson? It's labor, so that's why we pay so little for consumer goods, is because you can take the most expensive part of the process and make it way less expensive by offshoring it. And, again, not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's like a complicated thing. It creates, that's globalization. And it kind of looks like there's this ensuing retreat from globalization, especially with, I'm not very savvy to all the reforms they're trying to make, especially like in the States. But, if you look at microprocessors and stuff like that, trying to get some of that stuff made in the States because it's a national security interest as well. And there's that, like, it's economic nationalism, and it's there's the security aspect of it, and there's a bunch of other stuff going on. So, what happens when you start, if you're able to, have way more semiconductors made in the US, like, what does that do outside of just the price? You obviously need a lot of experts to work on something like that. Like with guitars, even though it's a much more automated process, like guitars don't set themselves up out of the factory.
You still need someone to operate a plec.
Yeah, you still need someone to operate the plec and operate the CNC, and that expertise, if that's taking place, in the country of origin, then again, like, do you get more John Sears eventually? But instead of, or like, if you had people who were working for Gibson in the 70s who left and did their own thing, they'd have a different skill set to someone working there now who might just operate the CNC. They may not have the full picture. So, that was another thing I remember reading about PRS, where like, if you start working there, you start in one division, but you eventually work everywhere.
Right.
So if you've been there long enough, you probably know how to make a guitar, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah. Is it Nags that came out of PRS?
Yes. I think Joe Nags was there. He did the private stock thing for a while, and like the Mirror was his design, and does the Nags thing now. So,
yeah. I mean, like, yeah, I still have that thing with PRS where, as I said, like some of the guitars that come out and they're so fancy and they're just so nice, and that's just like not what I like about guitars.
Yeah.
But then there's just like, I can't really be that stupid and be like, knock the refinement of the instrument and knock the the work atmosphere that seems to be like reasonable, and him as a boss seems kind of reasonable. I don't know anything to the truth or not of that. It's at least on the surface, it seems like fairly ethical. So, got to give him props for that. So like really complaining.
But also it is an aesthetic thing. Like, you're wearing a leather jacket and jeans.
Sure am.
Like James Dean, bro, like that's why that's popular.
Yeah.
A Butterscotch Telecaster or a Sunburst Les Paul is, that like I guess the trends in consumer goods at the time were as they were, and you had this like nexus of things, which it is iconic,
Man, as I said, I'm really coming around to my own hypocrisy over the course of this discussion. The conservative guitar player and the like hating of conservative guitars. It's just the dichotomy of that. I'm just like, just shut the fuck up, Troy.
but it's that the idea is that like if you understand the hypocrisy, then that's the tension is the thing that's where your desire to do stuff comes from, that push and pull between I want this, but I don't want it to be exactly the way it was when it was made like that, but I still want it to kind of be that. So, that's, I guess, why Fender have custom shops and why there is space for other ideas in there. And I think, the cool thing about it being different is like, yeah, you can listen to a Pliny record and know that he's probably playing a digital modeler and a Strandberg, and that's something that he could literally put in his backpack and go and do a gig anywhere and sound the same. But there's still that space for like, I plug a Les Paul into a Marshall full stack and I need a truck to drive my rig around and I'm prepared to do it. Like it's less one thing. It's like the trends don't get replaced now. They just get embellished.
Yeah. Cool.
Having said that, could you ever gig with a Strandberg?
I've still never played one, so maybe. I think you probably could. You already played with that Harley Benton one, right? I
got that headless Harley, which is
headless.
a shameless Strandberg ripoff. It's a really good guitar,
Yeah, I've tried the Ibanez ones, whatever those ones are. They didn't really feel.
The Ibanez headless, yeah.
Yeah, it's just not my thing. Again, like. Here I am. I'm just complaining about innovation and like not enjoying the innovation. So it's silly. I think like, as I was saying all that stuff, the thing that came to mind is like, yeah, the interconnectivity with electronic music is probably just in terms of a space that I'd like to explore or like more companies to explore. Like that's what it is. You get a little bit of it with MIDI guitars or the Fishman pickup that what's that one called? You had that for a bit, the MIDI thing.
The triple play, yeah.
Triple play, yeah. Like those things are cool, but it's like the more I would like to see that and more people just keep pushing that side of it because maybe I'm just ultimately over rock guitar.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, like I love the sound of vintage synthesizers, but there really is. The Roland GK stuff is pretty good and the triple play is pretty good, but it's not like playing a keyboard, and it's not like playing a guitar. That feels like kind of one of the final frontiers where it's like, how could you get a guitar, which is the thing you and I grew up playing, that's the muscle memory that's baked into us. How can I get more mileage out of those existing skills and just get access to a whole new suite of sounds? Because I love those sounds.
Yeah, that's what I've been. I'm always looking out when I like the Boss thing. That was it, the SY 200 and 600 or whatever, 500. Like when all that stuff came out, like that seems really cool. That human computer interface, or the Fisherman pickup, as I said, because I'd love to be able to incorporate that into the gigs. That would make me like tick off the technical satisfaction, but also make it slightly more creative because it's just not the same guitar sounds all the time.
Yeah.
I've said before, like all the stuff with me and speakers, I'm still working out elements of that. But that's different. Like that's more of a recording studio and trying to like work on other people's stuff and get that sounding better. Whereas like just me and my own creativity is sort of maybe slightly different. Or my interests are slightly different. So
it's interesting to think the way something like a guitar cuts across genres and other things humans like to categorize themselves into, belief systems and political views and taste in music and aesthetics and things like that. It really does just feel like kind of a fork or something, Doesn't matter what you believe. Heaps of people will eat food with a fork. Or they'll use they'll use a bowl or a plate. Talking about guitar in this way, it sort of feels like that, where it's like, this fork with the four prongs, bro, that is like the way the ellipse that they've traced out, I'm sure there are people. Well, hey, all those things you have in your home, someone had to design them, right?
Yep.
And if you don't notice them, then maybe that's good design. So, that's it. Seems like such a more utilitarian kind of tool. Or, falling. At least we're not audiophiles, Troy.
Yeah, I mean, thank God for that. I'm very over. Analog recording gear at all at the moment. It's kind of just the way. This is a completely different topic, but yeah, the way that I work. I feel like I've just rearranged my racks to remove a bunch of compressors that were there just because they looked cool, not because they served a function. And it's sort of, I sent you the picture of it, but having moved a rack out, now there's actual space in this control room that I didn't have before, and it's actually comfortable. It's like, man, I was looking at, again, slightly off topic, but that new SSL controller that came out, the one fader one. Did you see that?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. I actually went and I didn't demo it, but I went and looked at it at the music shop today. That versus the Avid dock thing, because they're about similar price and do similar sort of things. But yeah, that like the whole way that I work now, and that I've been like the trajectory of that over the last couple of years has been to eliminate a lot of analog gear and just do as much stuff with the computer and as few other things in front of me as possible. So, all these extra controls and stuff are almost irrelevant, but having one fader to be able to move up and down to do rides would be really useful.
Yeah. I kind of feel the same thing though. It's like when, I like playing with gear. It's my hobby. But when I want to work, the less stuff in front of me, the better. Just like I will clean my desk before I do any recording. I'm like one of those kind of people where it's like, no distractions, please. Just if I've got a tuner and a guitar plugged into something, then I can do what I need to do. So again, I feel like that's just a skill set that, you develop over time. And then when you click into that mental space, that's where the kind of, I can do the job with the minimal stuff kicks in. But the rest of the time you kind of want to have fun. So stuff's kind of fun.
Yep. Not right now, but I want to talk to you about the human interface when it comes to dialing guitar sounds.
Oh, yeah.
Not the human interface,
okay.
the interface between human and guitar sound. I think it might be a cool topic that we can talk about another time. Like, I'll just preface it by saying, so I have right on my desk here, I might be able to lift it up. It might be a bit small, but I've got this Stream Deck.
Oh, the Stream Deck, yep.
I was showing Charles one the other day. This is one that has the knobs on it, and this does my monitor controller for the for my Avid Matrix Studio interface over there. But it has 4 knobs on it, and it has 8 buttons, and then it has a few other little tricks and stuff it can do if you don't use it with SoundFlow, if you just use it as a normal thing. So when it first came out, I was like, well, that's cool because you can make the buttons do whatever you want. What are some things you could do with these buttons? Because if you buy a like a MIDI Huey controller or something like that, where it has set buttons on it, that's set buttons and knobs. The labeling of those knobs is always a bit kind of funky, but this, because it's like each button
right,
is a little easier to see. I'm like, oh, you could do some cool stuff with it. So I was thinking like, right, hypothetically, again, one example, you have a distressor, right? This has 4 knobs on it. Distressor has 4 knobs. So hypothetically, you can map the knobs to a distressor and make the buttons do the various things on that. So there's one thing. But then trying to think about it in other ways, like guitar plugins. So, mapping it to your bass, middle, treble, gain on the 4 knobs or other elements of it. But then also extending it to the Axe effects, because same sort of thing. Like it'd be great to be able to dial those knobs on, like knobs in. But then I also got thinking of like, I have, your FM3 that's on the ground. Mm-hmm. I don't like using the knobs on that because I prefer to use the screen.
Lean down it,
but I could put it on the desk and do it. But then
then you can't step on the buttons.
Yeah, but still, it's kind of like then I'm dialing a thing in on the screen, like on the little screen, whereas the FM3 software and the Axe FX8 and the same sort of, like all these things, I much prefer doing that on the screen. But then the interface, I'm like talking about adding buttons to something that already has buttons, but I don't like where the buttons are. It's, you know what I mean? It's just like really silly. So the actual way of dialing in sounds, like we should have a little extended chat about that another time, because this is probably already like long enough. And
it might be cool to find track down a guest who's got some experience designing these things or something like that. Yeah, so like if anybody's listening and they want to suggest some names we can reach out to, I would love that.
Yeah, like you've mentioned the Line 6 or the Helix or whatever, that interface being like really like pretty schmicko, like pretty streamlined, pretty accessible, which I absolutely agree with. And there's other pieces of gear that are certainly not the same level. There was something I came across the other day that was really bothering me. It wasn't the FM3. It was like there was another piece of gear that I was trying to get to work with just the knobs and buttons on the thing. And it was just driving me nuts. Again, I can't remember which one it was. But yeah, it's just like, it'd be cool to have a chat to someone like that. Maybe it was Santiago. We could have a chat to him again. And he might.
That was so good.
He might know. So anyway, I'll just let me wrap up my thing saying like I have had a crisis of faith. Maybe Paul Reed Smith's not so bad. Maybe I just need to fucking get over myself. And I'll leave it there from Uncle Troy.
I will just surmise that we're all doomed in the coming AI apocalypse, and in the meantime, let's just enjoy our time on Earth. So, there's been another episode of the Gear Podcast, Troy. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you all next week.
Peace.